The morning light filtered through the blinds of Dr. Andrew Morgan's office, casting golden stripes across his mahogany desk. He glanced at his watch. 7:30 a.m. The hospital wouldn't be bustling with activity for another half hour. Perfect timing. His fingers hovered over his phone before he composed a quick text message. Just checking in. Hope you slept well. Dinner tonight. Andrew ran his hand through his salt and pepper hair and straightened his white coat. At 45, he still turned heads. The mirror hanging on his office wall reflected a man whose years of swimming had kept his physique firm, whose confidence had only grown with his rising reputation as one of Boston General's top cardiothoracic surgeons. His blue eyes, described by more than one woman as devastating, crinkled at the corners as he smiled at his reflection. The message wasn't to his wife Elise. It was to Sophia Chen, the brilliant new radiologist, who had started at the hospital 3 months ago. Sophia, with her quick mind and quicker laugh, had become more than a colleague during late-night consultations over complex cases. She was 29, ambitious, and when she looked at Andrew, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Desire mixed with admiration. His phone buzzed. Slept terribly. Missed you. Yes to dinner. My place. Andrew smiled, tucking the phone into his pocket as a knock sounded at his door. Come in, he called, composing his face into the professional mask his patients and colleagues knew well. Elise Morgan stood in the doorway, a travel mug of coffee in one hand and a paper bag in the other. His wife of 20 years, the mother of his 2 teenage children, and once the love of his life. At 43, Elise was still beautiful, her dark hair now streaked with deliberate highlights, rather than the natural chestnut of her youth. Her body kept toned through dedicated yoga practice and running. You left before breakfast, she said, stepping into his office. I brought you that sprouted grain bagel you like and some coffee. Andrew felt a pang of something. Guilt, perhaps. Or maybe just the discomfort of worlds colliding. As he took the offerings. Thanks, he said, leaning in to kiss her cheek. Got an early valve replacement. Wanted to review the chart one more time. Elise nodded, her green eyes studying his face. For a moment, Andrew wondered if she could read the secrets written there. If 16 years of marriage had given her some supernatural insight into his betrayals. Will you be home for dinner? She asked, her voice casual. Too casual. Not sure. This surgery might run long, and then I've got paperwork. The lie slipped out easily. Practiced. Right, Elise said, nodding. The kids have activities anyway. Maybe tomorrow. She turned to leave, then paused, looking back at him with an expression he couldn't quite decipher. Have a good day, Andrew. Save lives. The door closed behind her with a soft click that somehow felt final. Elise Morgan sat in her car in the hospital parking lot, her hands gripping the steering wheel until her knuckles whitened. She wasn't stupid. She wasn't blind. The signs had been there for months. The late nights, the distracted conversations. The way Andrew's phone was suddenly always face down, always with him, even in the bathroom. For weeks she'd told herself she was imagining things. Andrew was a dedicated surgeon. His work saved lives. Of course he was busy. Of course he was distracted. Of course he was tired when he got home. Too tired for conversation. Too tired for intimacy. But then the receipts started appearing. Dinners at restaurants they never visited together. A hotel bar charge on a night he'd claimed to be at a medical and conference across town. And most damning of all, a jewelry store receipt for a delicate silver bracelet she'd never received. 3 days ago, she'd done something she never thought she would. While Andrew showered, she'd checked his phone. The messages from Sophia had been explicit enough to leave no doubt. But they weren't the only ones. There were texts from Vanessa, a pharmaceutical rep who visited the hospital regularly, and from Diane, a divorced nurse who worked in Andrew's department. The betrayal had been a physical blow, leaving her breathless, hunched over his phone in their bedroom while the shower ran. 3 women, 3 separate affairs, each seemingly unaware of the others. And her, the wife, the 4th woman in her husband's crowded life. Now, sitting in her car, Elise felt something shift inside her. The shock was fading, giving way to something harder, colder. She'd given Andrew 20 years of her life. She'd supported him through medical school and residency, working as a teacher to pay the bills. She'd put her own career as an artist on hold to raise Jacob and Emma. She'd been his partner, his champion, his foundation, and he'd repaid her with deception. Elise started the car. She wasn't going home to cry. She wasn't going to confront him yet either. First, she needed information. Then, she needed a plan. Enough, she whispered to her reflection in the rearview mirror. Enough being the understanding wife. Sophia Chen adjusted her silk blouse, checked her lipstick in the compact mirror, and stepped into the elevator at precisely 7:15 p.m. The workday was over. Most of the administrative staff had left, and she was headed to her apartment, where Andrew would meet her in less than an hour. Her stomach fluttered with anticipation. She'd never meant to become involved with a married man. When she'd accepted the position at Boston General, fresh from her fellowship at Johns Hopkins, her 5-year plan had included establishing herself professionally, publishing research, maybe finding a nice, uncomplicated man to date casually. Then she'd met Dr. Andrew Morgan during her first week. He'd been conducting rounds, commanding the attention of a group of residents with his incisive questions and obvious expertise. Later that same day, he'd found her struggling with the hospital's archaic filing system and spent an hour helping her, making her laugh with stories about his early days at the hospital. The attraction had been immediate, but Sophia had resisted. She knew about his wife, had seen family photos in his office during that first meeting. But Andrew had pursued her gently, professionally at first, asking her input on cases, bringing her coffee during long shifts, finding reasons to consult with her. The line had been crossed 3 months ago, after a particularly difficult case. A 6-year-old with a congenital heart defect who hadn't survived surgery. Andrew had found her crying in the doctor's lounge at 2 a.m., and somehow comfort had turned to passion. Now, as the elevator doors opened on the parking garage level, Sophia stepped out, lost in thoughts of the evening ahead. She didn't notice the woman standing by her car until she was almost upon her. Dr. Chen, Sophia startled, nearly dropping her keys. The woman was slender, attractive, with intelligent green eyes that assessed Sophia coolly. Yes, Sophia responded, wariness creeping into her voice. I'm Elise Morgan, the woman said, and Sophia felt the blood drain from her face. Andrew's wife, I think we should talk. Andrew's day had gone from bad to worse. The valve replacement had taken longer than expected. When the patient developed complications, he'd had to cancel his lunch with Vanessa, the pharmaceutical representative whose flirtatious sales pitches had evolved into an occasional physical relationship over the past year. She hadn't taken it well, sending increasingly angry texts throughout the afternoon. Then Diane, the nurse he'd been sleeping with for nearly 6 months, had cornered him in the supply closet, tears in her eyes, telling him she couldn't continue their relationship unless he made some changes. She wanted more time, more commitment, more of him. He'd placated her with promises he had no intention of keeping. feeling a flicker of irritation at her emotional demands. By the time he finished his last consultation, he was exhausted, his mind already on the evening ahead with Sophia. Unlike Vanessa and Diane, Sophia demanded nothing from him. Their relationship existed in its own perfect bubble, intellectual and physical, uncomplicated by expectations he couldn't fulfill. Andrew changed out of his scrubs, putting on the spare clothes he kept in his office, dark jeans and a blue button-down that Elise had once told him matched his eyes. He checked his watch. 7:45 p.m. He'd be at Sophia's by 8:15, a little later than planned, but still plenty of time for the evening he'd been anticipating all day. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Come to the Harborside Hotel, room 718. It's urgent." Andrew frowned at the message. E for Elise. But this wasn't her number, and Elise never stayed in hotels. His curiosity piqued. He texted back, "Who is this?" The response came immediately. "Someone who knows everything about you and Sophia. You and Vanessa. You and Diane. Room 718. Now, Andrew felt a cold wave of fear wash over him. Someone knew. Someone knew everything. His mind raced. Was it blackmail? A prank? One of the women discovering the others? He needed to find out, to contain whatever this was before it reached Elise. He texted Sophia quickly. "Emergency surgery came up. Have to cancel tonight. We'll make it up to you." Then he headed for the Harborside Hotel, his heart pounding with dread. The hotel room was dimly lit. A bottle of wine and 2 glasses sitting on the small table by the window overlooking Boston Harbor. Andrew knocked hesitantly, then more firmly when there was no immediate answer. The door swung open, and he found himself face to face with Elise. "Come in," she said, her voice oddly calm. "We have a lot to discuss." Andrew stepped into the room, his mind whirling. Had Elise discovered his affairs? If so, why meet in a hotel rather than confront him at home? And how had she texted from an unknown number? "Sit down, Andrew." Elise gestured to one of the chairs at the small table. "Wine?" "What's going on, Elise?" he asked, remaining standing. "Why are we here?" Elise poured herself a glass of wine, took a sip, and looked at him, with eyes that seemed different, harder, more knowing than he'd ever seen them. "I've spent the last 3 days meeting with your mistresses," she said. The word mistresses, sharp as a scalpel. Interesting women, all of them. Sophia is brilliant, isn't she? So young, so ambitious. Vanessa struck me as pragmatic. She told me it was just physical between you two, no strings attached. And Diane? Well, Diane is in love with you. Did you know that? Andrew felt as if the floor had dropped out beneath him. "Elise, Don't," she cut him off. "Don't insult me with excuses or apologies. I'm not interested in either." Andrew sank into the chair, his legs suddenly unable to support him. "How did you find out?" Elise laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "You got sloppy, Andrew. Receipts, text, messages, late nights with thin explanations. But that's not what matters now. What matters is what happens next." She reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope, sliding it across the table to him. "Divorce papers," she said. "Already drawn up by my lawyer. Very generous terms. I keep the house, half your assets, and you'll pay alimony and child support. Sign them, and I'll keep your affairs private. The hospital board, your colleagues, our friends, the children. No one needs to know what kind of man you really are." Andrew stared at the envelope, his mind racing. The terms would be financially devastating, but the alternative, public humiliation, potential professional consequences, his children learning of his betrayals, was unthinkable. "And if I don't sign, he asked, his voice barely audible. Elise's smile was cold. Then everyone finds out, and I do mean everyone. I've spent 20 years building connections in this city, Andrew. Our neighbors, your colleagues, the parents at the kids' schools. They're my friends, not yours. How do you think they'll react when they learn how you've been spending your evenings? The threat hung in the air between them. You've also been committing insurance fraud, Elise continued, her voice matter of fact. Ordering unnecessary tests for Sophia's patients as favors to her. Writing prescriptions for medications Vanessa sells to boost her numbers. Did you think I wouldn't discover that too? Andrew felt ill. It hadn't seemed significant at the time. Small professional courtesies, nothing more, but framed this way, presented to the hospital board or the state medical board. You wouldn't, he said. That would hurt the kids. Hurt your own financial future. Try me, Elise responded, her eyes unwavering. I've already contacted a journalist at the Boston Globe. One call from me, and your career is over. The silence stretched between them, heavy with 2 decades of shared history, and the wreckage of what they'd once built together. Why like this? Andrew finally asked. Why not just confront me at home? Elise took another sip of wine, considering him over the rim of her glass. Because I wanted you to feel what I felt. The shock, the humiliation, the ground shifting beneath your feet. And because this way, I control the narrative. This isn't a conversation, Andrew. It's an ultimatum. She stood, gathering her purse. I'll give you until tomorrow evening to decide. The children are staying with my sister for the week. I told them we needed some time to work on our marriage. Her laugh was bitter. Sign the papers, move out, and we'll tell them we grew apart. Fight me, and they'll know exactly who their father is. As she walked to the door, Andrew found his voice again. I did love you, Elise. I still do, in my way. Elise paused, her hand on the doorknob. For a moment, her composure cracked, and he glimpsed the pain beneath her cold exterior. Your way wasn't enough, she said quietly. It never was. The door closed behind her, with a finality that echoed in the empty room. Sophia Chen's apartment felt smaller than usual, the walls closing in as she sat across from Elise Morgan at her kitchen table. The woman before her wasn't what Sophia had expected. There were no tears, no recriminations, no dramatic scenes like in the movies. Instead, Elise was composed, articulate, and somehow more intimidating for her calmness. He told me his marriage was essentially over, Sophia said, her voice small in the quiet apartment. He said you lived separate lives, that you stayed together for the children. Elise nodded, as if this was exactly what she'd expected to hear. And the bracelet, the silver one with the heart charm. Did he tell you that was the first piece of jewelry he ever gave me, 20 years ago, that he's given the same bracelet to every woman he's been with? Sophia's hand went instinctively to her wrist, where the delicate silver chain rested. I don't understand. He's not just sleeping with you, Dr. Chen. There's Vanessa from pharmaceutical sales, and Diane, the nurse from his department. Probably others I haven't discovered yet. Andrew has a pattern. Sophia felt sick. The reality of her situation crashing down around her. She'd believed herself special, had convinced herself that their connection was unique, that she wasn't really a homewrecker because the marriage was already broken. Why are you telling me this? She asked, fighting to keep her voice steady. Why not just confront him, divorce him? Elise regarded her thoughtfully. Because you deserve to know the truth. And because I'm offering you a choice. She placed a business card on the table between them. This is the contact information for Dr. Rebecca Liu at Massachusetts General. She's looking for a radiologist with your qualifications. I took the liberty of recommending you. If you're interested, she'll interview you next week. A fresh start, away from Boston General and my husband. Sophia stared at the card. And if I'm not interested? Then nothing changes immediately. But I will be divorcing Andrew, and when I do, everything will come to light. His affairs, his ethical lapses, the preferential treatment he's given your department, in exchange for your companionship. I imagine the hospital board would be very interested in that information, don't you? The threat was clear, delivered without heat, but unmistakable in its intention. You've thought of everything, Sophia said, a reluctant admiration in her voice. I've had time to plan, Elise replied, standing to leave. 3 days of absolute clarity after 20 years of trusting the wrong man. It's remarkable what you can accomplish when your life falls apart. At the door, Elise paused. He'll try to contact you tomorrow, after I've confronted him. He'll be desperate, looking for comfort, for validation. What you tell him then is up to you. But remember, he lied to you, just as he lied to me, to Vanessa, to Diane. Whatever you felt for him was built on fiction. After Elise left, Sophia sat motionless at her kitchen table, the business card before her, the weight of her choices pressing down. Her phone buzzed with a text from Andrew, cancelling their evening plans. She stared at the message, seeing it now through new eyes, wondering how many other women had received the same text tonight. The next morning, Andrew arrived at the hospital, feeling as though he'd aged a decade overnight. He'd barely slept, his mind cycling through options, none of them good. Sign Elise's papers and lose half his assets, his home, and possibly his relationship with his children. Fight her and risk losing his reputation, his career, everything he'd built. He needed allies, needed comfort. He tried calling Sophia, but she didn't answer. Unusual for her. She typically responded immediately to his messages. Vanessa cornered him near the elevators, her expression thunderous. "You've been avoiding me," she accused. "Not now, Vanessa," he said, glancing around nervously. "I've had a complicated surgery schedule." "That's not what your wife said when she came to see me yesterday," Vanessa replied, her voice low but sharp. "She seemed to think you had plenty of free time, just not for her." Andrew felt the blood drain from his face. "Elise spoke to you?" "Oh, yes. Showed me texts between you and Sophia. You and some nurse named Diane. Quite the collection you've got, Dr. Morgan." Vanessa's professional smile was razor-edged. "For the record, I don't appreciate being part of a harem, and my company definitely won't appreciate hearing about how you've been writing prescriptions to boost my sales numbers." She brushed past him, then turned back. "Don't call me again, and find another pharma rep for your department." Andrew watched her walk away, panic rising in his throat. If Elise had already spoken to Vanessa, had she approached Diane as well? His question was answered when he reached his department and found Diane's station empty. The charge nurse, Marion, gave him a cold look. "Diane called in sick," she said. "Requested a transfer to the cardiac wing at Mercy Hospital. Effective immediately. Seemed quite upset when she called. Mentioned your name several times." Marion's disapproving gaze made it clear that whatever Diane had said, it hadn't been complimentary. News traveled fast in hospitals. By lunchtime, Andrew noticed the changed atmosphere. Conversations that stopped when he approached. Colleagues who suddenly had urgent business elsewhere. Nurses who responded to his requests with minimal professionalism and no warmth. Desperate, he tried Sophia again during his lunch break. This time she answered. "We need to talk," he said, without preamble. "Can you meet me?" My office, the on-call room, anywhere. Your wife came to see me last night, Sophia replied, her voice distant. She told me everything, Andrew. About Vanessa, about Diane, about the bracelet. Sophia, it's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. I was just another conquest, another ego boost. Did you even keep our conversations straight? Or did you tell all of us the same things? Did you call Diane by my name sometimes? Did you buy us all the same gifts to keep it simple? The bitterness in her voice cut through him. This was Sophia, brilliant, composed Sophia, who never made emotional demands, who kept their relationship light and uncomplicated. I'm transferring to Mass General, she continued. Dr. Liu has offered me a position. I suggest you find another radiologist to manipulate. The call ended, leaving Andrew standing in his office, his carefully constructed world collapsing around him. His phone buzzed with a text from Elise. Have you made your decision? The papers are waiting. Elise sat in her studio, the space she'd carved out in the attic of their Victorian home years ago, but had rarely used since the children were born. Canvases leaned against the walls, some blank, others half-finished projects, abandoned as life, Andrew's career, the children's needs, the daily demands of running a household, took precedence. She'd spent the morning here, paintbrush in hand for the first time in years, channeling her pain and rage onto canvas. The result was unlike anything she'd created before. Darker, more powerful, raw with emotion. Her phone chimed with a text from her lawyer. Morgan signed everything. No changes, no negotiations. Papers being filed today. Key to the safety deposit. Box with the evidence, Elise smiled grimly. Keep it secure, just in case. She set down her phone and picked up her paintbrush again, dipping it into crimson paint. Another text arrived. This one from Andrew. It's done. I've signed. When can I see the kids? Elise considered the question, weighing her anger against what would be best for Jacob and Emma. Despite everything, Andrew was their father. Her revenge against him shouldn't extend to damaging that relationship. They'll be home Sunday evening. You can come for dinner. We'll tell them together. His response came quickly. Thank you. I know I don't deserve your consideration. Elise didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. A knock at the studio door pulled her from her thoughts. Her sister. Caroline stood there, concern etched on her features. The kids are watching a movie downstairs. Caroline said, stepping into the studio. How are you holding up? Elise gestured to the canvas before her. A heart not broken, but transforming. Pieces of it becoming something new, something stronger. I'm surprisingly okay, she said. Angry, hurt, but liberated too. Do you know how long it's been since I painted like this? Since I felt this alive? Caroline studied the painting, then her sister's face. What happens next, Elise? After the divorce is final. Elise set down her paintbrush, turning to face her sister fully. I've applied to the MFA program at the Boston Art Institute. Part-time, so I can still be there for the kids. I'm renting a small gallery space in Cambridge to show some of my work, and I've joined a support group for divorced women. Turns out, there are quite a few of us with similar stories. And Andrew. Elise's expression hardened slightly. Andrew will have visitation with the kids. He'll pay alimony and child support. He'll continue his career, probably more carefully now, and someday he'll find another woman to deceive. But that won't be my problem anymore. Caroline wrapped an arm around her sister's shoulders. I'm proud of you, you know, the way you've handled this. It's been impressive. Terrifying, but impressive. Elise laughed, the sound genuine for the first time in days. I surprised myself. All those years of being the perfect doctor's wife, the supportive mother, the understanding partner. I thought that's who I was. Turns out, there's more to me. She looked back at her painting, at the transformation taking shape on the canvas. Much more. 6 months later, Andrew Morgan stood outside the small gallery in Cambridge, staring at the poster for the exhibition inside. Metamorphosis, New Works by Elise Morgan. The image on the poster was striking. A heart breaking apart, its fragments becoming butterflies in flight. He hadn't seen Elise in weeks. Their interactions were limited to logistics regarding the children, text messages about pickup times, and parent-teacher conferences. The divorce had been finalized quickly, cleanly, with minimal public scandal, thanks to his complete capitulation to her terms. His life had changed dramatically in those 6 months. He'd moved to a sterile apartment near the hospital, furnished with pieces that held no memories. His relationship with his children had become scheduled, formal in a way that broke his heart. Weekend visits filled with expensive activities that couldn't mask the underlying tension. At work, his reputation had survived, but barely. Rumors circulated, whispers followed him. Sophia had indeed transferred to Mass General. Diane had moved to Mercy Hospital. Vanessa had been replaced by an older male pharmaceutical representative who treated Andrew with professional distance. No women pursued him now. His colleagues were cordial, but reserved. The hospital board had quietly conducted an ethics review, resulting in a formal warning and supervision of his prescription practices. Measures that stopped short of public censure, but made clear that he was on probation in all but name, and yet, standing before the evidence of Elise's rebirth, Andrew felt something unexpected. Pride. Pride in the woman who had refused to be a victim, who had channeled her pain into creation rather than destruction, who had emerged stronger from the wreckage he'd made of their marriage. Taking a deep breath, he pushed open the gallery door and stepped inside. The space was crowded, filled with art lovers, examining Elise's canvases and sculptures. Andrew moved through the room anonymously, no one recognizing him as the subject of so many of these powerful works. The shattered relationships, the deceptions revealed, the painful growth that follows betrayal. He found Elise near the back of the gallery, surrounded by admirers, a glass of champagne in her hand. She was laughing, her face animated in a way he hadn't seen in years. She wore a sleek black dress he'd never seen before, her hair styled differently, her entire being radiating a confidence and joy that struck him physically. When had she stopped looking like this with him? Had she ever? As if sensing his presence, Elise turned, her eyes meeting his across the crowded room. Her smile faltered momentarily, then returned. Different now. Polite, distant. The smile one might give a casual acquaintance. She excused herself from her group and approached him, champagne glass still in hand. "Andrew," she said, her voice neutral. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Emma mentioned your opening," he replied. I wanted to see your work." Elise nodded, her expression giving nothing away. "And what do you think?" Andrew looked around at the vibrant canvases, the powerful sculptures, the raw emotion captured in color and form. "I think you're incredibly talented. I always knew you were, but this is extraordinary, Elise." Something softened in her eyes. A brief acknowledgement of the compliment. "Thank you." An awkward silence fell between them. 20 years of history and 6 months of separation, creating a chasm neither knew how to bridge. "Are you happy?" Andrew finally asked, the question that had haunted him since their separation. Elise considered him, her head tilted slightly. "I'm finding my way there," she said honestly. "The kids are adjusting. My classes are challenging, but fulfilling. This," She gestured to the gallery around them. This has been healing. So yes, I think I am finding happiness. Andrew nodded, swallowing past the lump in his throat. I'm glad. You deserve that. And you? Elise asked, courtesy rather than genuine concern in her tone. How are you, Andrew? He could have lied, could have pretended that his new life was satisfying, that he'd moved on as successfully as she had. But standing before the woman who had known him for half his life, the woman he'd betrayed so thoroughly, dishonesty seemed pointless. I'm learning to live with the consequences of my choices, he said simply. Some days are harder than others. Elise studied him, her artist's eye, seeing perhaps more than he wanted to reveal. That's a start, she said finally, learning to face the truth. Someone called Elise's name, a gallery owner wanting to introduce her to a potential buyer. She glanced over her shoulder, then back at Andrew. I need to go, she said. Thank you for coming. As she turned to leave, Andrew spoke again, the words escaping before he could reconsider. I miss you, all of you, the kids, our life. Elise paused, not turning back to face him. What you miss, Andrew, is the comfort of having everything. Your family waiting at home, your lovers waiting elsewhere. That life is gone. We're all moving forward without you at the center. Her words were delivered without malice, a simple statement of fact that hurt more for its truth. Good luck, Andrew, she said, glancing back at him one last time. I hope you find what you're looking for. He watched her walk away, moving confidently through the crowd, accepting congratulations and praise. Her future unfolding in directions he would no longer share. The woman he had betrayed had transformed her pain into beauty, her anger into strength, while he remained trapped in the consequences of his deceptions. Outside the gallery, Andrew stood on the sidewalk, looking up the stars emerging in the early evening sky. For the first time, he allowed himself to fully face what he had lost. Not just Elise, not just his family, but his integrity, his self-respect, the man he had once believed himself to be. The night air was cool against his face, carrying the promise of autumn, of change, of seasons turning. Perhaps that was what he needed as well. Not to reclaim what was lost, but to find a way forward, to become someone new, someone better. Andrew took one last look at the gallery, where Elise's transformation shone on every wall, then turned and walked away into the gathering darkness, carrying with him the first fragile seeds of understanding that sometimes the greatest revenge is not destruction, but rebirth, not punishment, but growth, and that perhaps someday he might find his own path to redemption.